The massive Imperial scout ship emerged from hyperspace at the edge of the Sol system, its sleek purple-black hull reflecting distant starlight. Captain James watched the alien vessel through the Earth Defense Force's advanced monitoring systems. His calm demeanor masked the gravity of the situation. Humanity's first contact with the Galactic Empire. "Sir, they're broadcasting on all frequencies," reported Officer Smith, his fingers dancing across the holographic display. "Standard Imperial conquest protocols, according to our intelligence." James nodded, his gray eyes fixed on the main screen. The Empire had conquered 1,000 worlds, but they had never met humans before. They were about to learn why that was significant. The Imperial message boomed through the command center speakers. "Primitive species of the third planet, this is Grand Commander Rex of the Galactic Empire. Your solar system now belongs to us. Submit or face extinction. You have one planetary rotation to respond." The control room fell silent. Years of preparation had led to this moment. James pressed a button on his command chair, activating the response protocol they had prepared for years. "This is Captain James of the Earth Defense Force. We have received your message." He paused, allowing a small smile to cross his face. "We have only one response. Run." Confusion rippled through the Imperial ship's bridge. Rex, a tall figure with metallic scales covering his body, turned to his second-in-command. "They dare to threaten the Empire. Scan their defensive capabilities." The scans revealed only a modest defense network, satellites, a few space stations, and a small fleet of ships. Nothing that could challenge Imperial might. Yet something about the humans' response troubled Rex. No species had ever reacted this way. "Sir," his intelligence officer called out, "they're transmitting a data package." "Display it," Rex ordered, expecting to see surrender terms. Instead, the screens filled with warfare footage, humans fighting humans across centuries, cavalry charges giving way to tank battles, trench warfare transforming into nuclear devastation, guerrilla tactics evolving into cyber warfare. The sheer variety and brutality of combat methods stunned the Imperial crew. "Analysis," Rex demanded. His chief analyst, trembling slightly, reported, "Sir, these primitives, they've had more wars in their short history than the Empire has had in 10,000 years. They don't just fight, they revolutionize warfare with each conflict. Their weapons evolution rate is impossible." James watched through surveillance feeds as the Imperial ship's crew reviewed Earth's military history. He knew what they were seeing. Humanity's relentless drive to innovate in combat. While other species perfected one form of warfare, humans had mastered them all, and invented new ones along the way. "Transmitting second package," Officer Smith announced. This time, the data showed humanity's defensive innovations. The kinetic bombardment platforms disguised as communication satellites, the asteroid belt converted into a minefield, the AI-driven response systems that could launch counterattacks faster than any organic being could react. On the Imperial ship, Rex studied the data with growing concern. These humans hadn't threatened him with superior numbers or technology. They had simply shown what happened to everyone who had ever tried to conquer them, other humans. "Sir," his tactical officer spoke up, their warning. It wasn't a threat. It was mercy. James released a quiet breath as he observed the Imperial ship's power emissions shifting from combat readiness to standby mode. They were learning what every human knew. The species that survived wasn't always the strongest or most advanced, but the one that had learned the most lessons from combat. "They're broadcasting again," Smith reported. Rex's voice had lost its earlier arrogance. "Earth Defense Force. We request diplomatic contact to discuss peaceful relations." James exchanged knowing looks with his crew. Humanity had spent centuries preparing for this moment, not by building the biggest guns, but by making sure any potential enemy knew exactly what they were getting into. "Diplomatic channels are open," James responded. "Welcome to Earth space, where we prefer to avoid wars, because we're too good at them." As the Imperial ship moved to a neutral position for negotiations, James couldn't help but think that sometimes the best battles were the ones you won without firing a shot. Humanity's greatest weapon had turned out to be its reputation, forged in blood, but ultimately used to keep the peace. Admiral Thomas stood before the massive holographic display in the Earth Defense Force's main briefing room. Around him sat the Empire's top military analysts, their scaled faces illuminated by the glow of Earth's military archives. It had been 3 days since first contact, and now came the detailed explanation of humanity's warning. "Let's begin with the 20th century," Thomas said, his voice steady. The hologram shifted to show World War I trenches. This was when we learned that industrial warfare could kill millions. The Imperial analysts watched in silence as soldiers charged through mud and barbed wire, their primitive weapons somehow more terrifying than energy rifles because of the raw determination behind them. "Fascinating," muttered lead analyst Pike, his crystalline eyes reflecting the footage. "Your species continued fighting even when defeat meant certain death." Thomas nodded. "That's lesson 1. Humans don't stop when the odds are impossible. We get creative." The display changed to show improvised weapons, tactical innovations, and the birth of modern warfare. "But surely with such losses, you learn to avoid war?" asked another analyst. The Admiral's grim smile told them otherwise. The hologram shifted to World War II, showing the leap in military technology in mere decades. Tanks rolled across continents, aircraft carriers revolutionized naval warfare, and finally, the mushroom clouds rose over Japan. 20 years. That's how long it took us to go from biplanes to nuclear weapons, Thomas explained. Now consider our current pace of advancement. The Empire's War Council had joined the briefing via quantum link, their ghostly projections showing increasing concern. High Commander Marcus leaned forward in his distant throne. "You would destroy your own world to win." "If necessary," Thomas replied. "But that's not the real warning." He gestured, and the hologram displayed modern military innovations. "This is." Images flowed past, swarms of AI-controlled drones, quantum-encrypted communications, plasma weapons reverse-engineered from crashed alien ships, and orbital defense platforms disguised as weather satellites. "We don't just adapt to war," Thomas continued. "We transform it. Every conflict teaches us new lessons, and we never forget them." The display showed guerrilla warfare tactics, cyber attacks that could cripple entire nations, and psychological operations that could turn populations against their leaders. "Your empire fights wars of conquest," Thomas said. "You have one doctrine, perfected over millennia. But humans—" He paused, letting the next images sink in. "We have thousands of ways to fight, and we invent new ones every time we're challenged." Pike raised a trembling hand. "The data suggests your species spends more resources on military research during peace than we do during active conflicts." "Correct." Thomas brought up classified files showing weapon systems even the Empire hadn't conceived of. "We're not naturally stronger or more advanced than you. We're just really, really good at finding new ways to win." The briefing room fell silent as the implications sank in. Humanity hadn't survived and thrived because they were superior. They had done it because they never stopped preparing for the worst. "There's one final thing you should understand," Thomas said, his voice softening. "We don't want to fight you. We're showing you all this because we'd rather have allies than enemies. Humanity has learned that the best victories are the ones where nobody dies." High Commander Marcus's projection stood, his expression unreadable. "You speak of peace while showing us weapons that could tear worlds apart." "We speak of peace precisely because we know the cost of war," Thomas corrected. "Your empire has conquered 1,000 worlds, but you've never faced a species that turned warfare itself into an art form. We're not threatening you. We're warning you because we value life, including yours." The hologram shifted one final time, showing Earth's combined military forces standing down, weapons powered but inactive. A gesture of trust, but also a reminder. "The choice is yours," Thomas concluded. But remember, everything we've shown you is decades old. Imagine what we're working on now." As the Imperial analysts filed out, their faces pale and drawn, Thomas knew the message had been received. Humanity's greatest weapon had always been its ability to make potential enemies stop and think. Do we really want to find out what they'll do if we push them? The warning had been delivered. Now they would wait to see if the Empire was wise enough to heed it. Director Lisa walked through the underground military facility, her footsteps echoing off steel walls as she led the Imperial delegation deeper into Earth's defense complex. High Commander Marcus followed close behind, his scaled skin reflecting the harsh fluorescent lights. "This is what we call the Vault," Lisa explained, reaching a massive blast door. "It's where we keep examples of humanity's problem-solving abilities." "More weapons?" Marcus asked, trying to hide his unease. Lisa smiled. "Something more interesting. Computer, begin demonstration sequence alpha." The blast doors opened to reveal a massive chamber filled with various displays. Each station showed a different aspect of human ingenuity, not just in warfare, but in survival. "You see," Lisa began, "humans don't just adapt to fight. We adapt to survive anything." She pointed to the first display. "When we couldn't fly, we built planes. When we couldn't survive underwater, we built submarines. When space was hostile to us, we found ways to live there anyway." The Imperial scientists in the delegation moved from display to display, their expressions shifting from curiosity to concern. One of them, Dr. Vale, stopped at a particular exhibit. "This can't be right," Vale muttered. "These primitives modify their own genes." "Correct," Lisa confirmed. "When we face a problem, we don't just build tools. We change ourselves if necessary. Genetic engineering, cybernetic enhancements, AI integration, whatever works." Marcus watched a demonstration of human special forces operators using simple tools to overcome complex security systems. "Your species seems to excel at finding unexpected solutions. We call it thinking outside the box," Lisa explained. "While other species perfect existing methods, we constantly look for new approaches. It's not about having the best technology. It's about using what you have in ways nobody expects." The delegation reached the central platform, where a holographic display showed Earth's current defense network. It wasn't just military installations. Every civilian satellite, every private spacecraft, even commercial communication networks could be repurposed for defense. "Your entire civilization is a weapon," Marcus realized aloud. Lisa shook her head. "No, Commander. Our entire civilization is a tool. Whether it becomes a weapon depends on how others treat us." She pressed a button, and the displays changed to show humanity's peaceful achievements, terraforming technology, medical breakthroughs, environmental restoration projects. "We're showing you our military capability not because we want to fight, but because we want you to understand something fundamental about humans." She turned to face Marcus directly. "We don't want to be your enemies. We'd rather help you solve problems you haven't even encountered yet." A junior Imperial officer spoke up. "But why show us all this? Aren't you afraid we'll find ways to counter your advantages?" The humans in the room actually laughed, a sound that made the Imperial delegation nervous. "Everything we've shown you," Lisa explained, "is public knowledge. Our real capabilities." She let the sentence hang meaningfully. Marcus studied her face, finally understanding. "This isn't just a warning about your military strength. It's a demonstration of how humans think." "Exactly," Lisa nodded. "You've conquered 1,000 worlds, but they all fought the way you expected them to fight. Humans, we turn mining ships into warships. We transform weather satellites into weapon platforms. We develop biological immunities to weapons while we sleep." She gestured to the facility around them. "This isn't a threat, Commander. It's a job application. Imagine what the Empire could achieve with humanity as allies instead of enemies." The delegation members exchanged glances. Their species had always valued strength and military might, but humans offered something different, unpredictability, and endless innovation. The Empire will need time to consider this proposition, Marcus said carefully. Of course, Lisa agreed. But remember, while you're thinking, we're inventing. The question isn't whether humanity is ready to join the galactic community. The question is whether the galactic community is ready for humanity. As the delegation departed, Lisa watched them through the facility's security feeds. The seeds had been planted. Now they would see if the Empire was wise enough to choose cooperation over conflict. General Robert paced the crystal-lined war chamber aboard the Imperial flagship, his boots clicking against the polished floor. Around the massive strategic table, the Empire's highest military commanders argued about the human problem. "They're still primitives," shouted Commander Blade, slamming his fist on the table. "Their ships can barely reach their own system's edge." Robert stopped pacing and faced the older commander. "That's exactly what makes them dangerous. You're all missing the point." The room fell silent as Robert activated the holographic display. Images from their latest intelligence reports filled the air. Ordinary human civilians turning everyday items into weapons, children learning complex battle strategies through games, and retired soldiers teaching survival skills to their communities. "Our spies found something disturbing," Robert continued. "Humans don't just have a military. They have a warrior culture that spans their entire civilization. But it's different from ours." He brought up footage of a human construction worker using his equipment to stop a robbery. Another clip showed a farmer modifying agricultural machinery to rescue people from a natural disaster. "They don't worship war like we do," Robert explained. "They worship problem-solving. Every human is potentially a warrior, not because they train for battle, but because they're taught from birth to overcome any challenge." High Commander Marcus, who had visited Earth's facilities, nodded slowly. "The young general is right. I've seen their capabilities firsthand." The display shifted to show classified human research projects. Artificial intelligence that could outthink any strategic computer, nanobots that could transform entire battlefields, and quantum communications that were impossible to intercept. "But here's the truly frightening part," Robert said, pulling up another dataset. "These are from just one of their smaller research facilities. Our analysts estimate we've discovered less than 10% of their actual military capabilities." Commander Blade scoffed. "Impossible. Our intelligence network is the best in the galaxy." "Is it?" Robert challenged. "Because according to these reports, human civilians spotted our best stealth agents within hours of their arrival on Earth. Not their military, their civilians." He displayed footage of ordinary humans casually identifying and tracking Imperial spies. The agents hadn't been arrested or confronted. They'd simply been rendered ineffective by aware citizens who treated it like a game. "Their children play something called Among Us," Robert continued. "It's teaching them infiltration detection as entertainment. They have millions of entertainment simulations teaching warfare, strategy, and survival skills. They call them video games." The war chamber erupted in murmurs. Marcus raised his hand for silence. "What do you propose, General Robert?" "We have two choices," Robert replied. "We can fight them and face an enemy that thinks in ways we can't predict, or we can ally with them and learn how they think." He pulled up one final image, a human classroom where children were solving complex problems using methods that even Imperial scientists found innovative. "Look at this footage," Robert urged. "These are their younglings, solving problems our best minds struggle with. Not because they're smarter, but because they think differently. They call it thinking outside the box. We don't even have a concept for that in our language." The room fell silent again as the implications sank in. An empire that had conquered 1,000 worlds through military might was facing something entirely new. A species that didn't just fight wars but revolutionized the very concept of conflict. "The humans gave us a warning," Robert concluded. "Not because they fear us, but because they genuinely don't want to fight. They showed us their old weapons and capabilities as a courtesy. But ask yourselves this: If these are the technologies they're willing to show us, what are they keeping hidden? High Commander Marcus stood, his decision made. General Robert will lead our diplomatic efforts with Earth. We need to understand these humans better. He paused, looking at each commander in turn, because they already understand us far too well. As the meeting adjourned, Robert stared at the image of the human classroom. The Empire had always valued strength, but perhaps it was time to learn a different kind of power. The power of endless innovation and adaptation. The Imperial War Simulation Chamber hummed with energy as thousands of quantum computers processed another scenario. Admiral Pike stood before the massive display, watching the 100th simulation of a conflict with Earth end in yet another devastating defeat. "Run it again," he ordered, his voice tired. "Change the approach. Full orbital assault this time." The chamber's AI complied, and holographic ships appeared above a simulated Earth. The Empire's finest tacticians watched from their stations, each controlling different aspects of the invasion force. "Beginning simulation," the AI announced. "Imperial fleet deploying in attack formation." At first, everything went according to plan. The Empire's ships moved into position, their superior technology clearly evident. But then, as with every previous simulation, things started going wrong in ways nobody could predict. "Sir," called out one of the tactical officers, "the humans are using their commercial satellites as kinetic weapons." On the display, hundreds of seemingly harmless communications satellites suddenly changed course, becoming a swarm of deadly projectiles. But that was just the beginning. "They're hacking our ship systems," another officer reported. "No. Wait. They hacked them weeks ago. They're just activating the backdoors now." Pike watched as human cyber warfare turned a third of the Imperial fleet against itself. It wasn't just the military ships. Civilian vessels, mining platforms, even space debris had been weaponized in ways the Empire's strategists had never considered. "Sir, the humans are broadcasting some kind of signal," a communications officer announced. "Let's hear it," Pike ordered. Through the chamber speakers came the last thing anyone expected: music. Human battle songs, transmitted on all frequencies, mixed with false orders and confusing signals. The psychological impact on the simulated Imperial forces was devastating. "Focus," Pike commanded. "Push through to their major cities." But the humans had prepared for that too. Each city was a trap, rigged with underground bunkers and hidden defense systems. Civilian infrastructure transformed into military assets at a moment's notice. Even the weather itself seemed to fight against the invasion, manipulated by human technology. "New scenario," Pike called out. "What if we target their agricultural centers instead?" The simulation reset, but the result was the same. Humans had distributed food production systems, underground farms, and synthetic food facilities. There was no single point of failure to exploit. After 12 hours of continuous simulations, Pike called for a halt. The chamber fell silent as the final results were tallied. "Display the statistics," he ordered. The numbers were shocking. In 1,000 simulated scenarios, using every possible Imperial strategy, the Empire had achieved only Pyrrhic victories at best, total defeats at worst. Even in scenarios where they vastly outnumbered the humans, the casualties and resource losses were catastrophic. "Sir," one of the younger analysts spoke up, "I think I understand now why they warned us to run." Pike turned to face him. "Explain." "In every simulation, we lose not because they're stronger, but because they think differently. We attack using standard military doctrine. He paused, searching for words. "They turn everything into a weapon. Not just their military assets, but their entire civilization becomes part of their defense. And we've only simulated their known capabilities," Pike added quietly. "Not what they might have hidden." The chamber's main door opened, and High Commander Marcus entered with General Robert. They had watched the entire session from a separate observation room. "You've seen the results," Marcus addressed the gathered officers. "Comments?" Pike stepped forward. Sir, in my 1,000 years of service, I've never seen anything like this. We're not just facing superior tactics or technology. We're facing a species that fundamentally changes the rules of warfare itself. Then you understand why I've called the full Imperial Council, Marcus replied. It's time for the Empire to make a decision that will change our history forever. As the officers filed out, Pike stayed behind, staring at the simulation display. It still showed Earth, peaceful and blue, yet somehow more terrifying than any heavily armed world they'd ever encountered. The humans hadn't just prepared for war. They'd made preparation itself into an art form. Computer, he spoke softly, save all simulation data under file name. Why'd we choose peace? Emergency alarms blared through the Imperial colony on Nova Prime. Space pirates, notorious for their brutal tactics, had launched a surprise attack on the peaceful settlement. The colony's 10,000 inhabitants faced certain doom. Their defensive fleet was hours away, and the pirates' reputation for leaving no survivors was well known. Imperial Command. This is Nova Prime. We are under heavy attack. Request immediate assistance. The colony's governor broadcasts desperately. In Earth's Defense Command Center, Captain James and Admiral Thomas watched the distress call. The Imperial colony was just outside Earth's defensive sphere, but close enough to matter. Well, James said quietly, time to show them what humans can really do. Thomas nodded and pressed the comm button. All special response teams, deploy. Operation Good Neighbor is now active. Within minutes, Earth's response shocked both the pirates and the Imperial colonists. Instead of traditional warships, small fast vessels appeared from seemingly nowhere. Each carried a team of human special forces operators equipped with gear that looked primitive to Imperial eyes. What are they doing? Asked an Imperial observer on Nova Prime. Those ships are barely armed. The humans answered that question in spectacular fashion. Their ships, designed to look weak, were actually packed with electronic warfare systems that immediately disrupted the pirates' communications and targeting systems. Sir, we're being hacked. A pirate lieutenant screamed as their ship's systems went haywire. Their energy weapons, designed to target large vessels, couldn't lock onto the agile human craft. Then came the second phase. Human operators, using what looked like simple spacesuits, launched themselves directly at the pirate vessels. The Imperial colonists watched in horror, thinking they were witnessing a suicide mission. Instead, they saw something unprecedented. The humans attached themselves to the pirate ships' hulls and began cutting their way in using tools that looked more suited to mining than warfare. Within minutes, they had breached the hulls. These humans are insane, the pirate captain shouted as combat reports flooded in. Human operators were inside their ships, using the pirates' own corridors and maintenance ducts as weapons. They released drones the size of insects that mapped entire ships in seconds. James watched the operation from Earth. Show them why humans are different, he ordered over the comm. The human forces didn't just fight. They adapted. When pirates sealed bulkheads, the humans used maintenance robots to bypass them. When pirates tried to vent sections to space, the humans used the explosive decompression to propel themselves to new positions. How are they doing this? The Imperial governor asked in awe. They're using maintenance tools as weapons. Indeed, the humans had brought tools rather than traditional weapons. They use mining lasers to cut through armor, construction foam to disable engines, and repair nanites to turn the pirates' own ship systems against them. Within an hour, it was over. The pirate fleet, known for destroying entire planetary defense forces, had been completely neutralized by what appeared to be a human maintenance crew with combat training. As the Imperial Defense Fleet finally arrived, they found the pirates' ships neatly disabled and their crews secured. More surprisingly, the humans had managed to save most of the pirates' lives. Why didn't you just destroy them? The Imperial Fleet Commander asked James over the comm. Because we didn't need to, James replied. Killing is easy. Saving lives while winning, that's the real challenge. The human operators were already heading home, leaving behind bewildered Imperial citizens and a reformed understanding of Earth's capabilities. In his command center, Admiral Thomas received a message from the Imperial High Command. It read simply, "We understand your warning now. Your ways are different than we imagined." Thomas smiled as he watched the operation recordings. The Empire had expected humans to showcase overwhelming force. Instead, they had demonstrated something far more impressive, the ability to win without unnecessary destruction. "Send a message to Imperial Command," Thomas ordered. "Tell them this was just a small example of human problem-solving. And remind them, these were our engineers and maintenance crews, not our dedicated military forces." The implications of that statement sent shockwaves through the Empire's leadership. If this was what human technical crews could do, what were their actual warriors capable of? The Imperial Palace's Grand Hall buzzed with activity as representatives from 1,000 worlds gathered for an unprecedented event. For the first time in the Empire's 10,000-year history, they were formally recognizing another species as equals without first attempting conquest. High Commander Marcus stood before the assembly, the formal declaration displayed behind him in holographic form. Beside him stood Admiral Thomas and Director Lisa, representing Earth. "Members of the Imperial Council," Marcus began, his voice carrying across the vast chamber. "We gather today to acknowledge something our empire has never faced before, a species that defeated us without firing a shot." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. On the massive screens around the hall, footage played from the recent pirate incident, showing human ingenuity in action. "For 10 millennia, the Empire has valued strength above all," Marcus continued. "Today, humans have taught us that true strength lies not in the ability to destroy, but in the wisdom to know when not to." Director Lisa stepped forward, carrying Earth's original warning message, the simple word "run" that had started everything. She placed it on the central pedestal, where it would be preserved in Imperial archives forever. "When we first encountered humans," Marcus explained, "we thought their warning was a threat. We now understand it was an invitation to evolve beyond our reliance on pure military might." The screens shifted to show the new Joint Human-Imperial Defense Initiatives. Human innovation combined with Imperial technology had already produced advancements that neither civilization could have achieved alone. In just 3 months of cooperation, Admiral Thomas addressed the assembly. "Our joint research teams have solved problems that have plagued the Empire for centuries, not through superior technology, but through different ways of thinking." He gestured to a group of human children who had been invited to the ceremony. They were playing with Imperial younglings, teaching them Earth games that secretly taught strategy and problem-solving. "This is humanity's true power," Thomas continued. "Not our weapons or our tactics, but our ability to look at any challenge from 1,000 different angles. We don't just adapt to problems. We transform them into opportunities." The assembly watched as more footage played. Humans teaching Imperial engineers new ways to approach old problems, Imperial scientists marveling at human creativity, and joint military exercises that showcased the strengths of both civilizations. But most importantly, Lisa added, "We've shown that strength doesn't require conflict. The Empire feared us because we excel at warfare. Now they value us because we excel at peace." Marcus raised his hand, and the formal declaration glowed brighter. "Therefore, by the power of the Imperial Council, we hereby recognize Earth not just as equals, but as teachers. Their methods will be studied, their innovations welcomed, and their friendship valued." The declaration was signed, not with weapons or threats, but with a simple handshake, a human gesture that the Empire had come to appreciate for its elegant simplicity. As the ceremony concluded, an Imperial child approached Thomas with a question that made the entire assembly fall silent. "If humans are so good at fighting, why do you try so hard not to?" Thomas knelt down to the child's level. "Because the greatest victory isn't defeating your enemy," he explained. "It's turning them into friends." In the Imperial War Council chamber later that day, The original warning message was placed in a prominent position. Below it, a new inscription read, "The day we learned that true power lies not in the ability to win wars, but in the wisdom to avoid them." General Robert, watching the message being installed, turned to Pike. "You know what's truly remarkable?" he asked. "They warned us to run, but instead taught us to stand together." As news of the declaration spread across the galaxy, other civilizations began to understand what the Empire had learned. Humanity's greatest weapon wasn't their capacity for war, but their talent for turning potential enemies into allies. The warning that had started as a threat had become a foundation for peace, proving that sometimes the best way to win a war was to make it unnecessary in the first place.